Hey, Lois.
Hey, Rabbi. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Very well. Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
Just wanted to say hello, so you know I'm
Hey,
here,
Dave.
even though you don't hear my voice.
We might.
It's good to hear it. It's good to hear you.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so we've done the mitzvah to know God, the mitzvah to unify God, the mitzvah, we had the mitzvah to be in awe of God. We had the mitzvah to pray to God. There was one more, right? These are the positive commandments.
Serve,
Right.
or is that the pray?
That was the pray, the serve God.
All right. Okay.
Only because he said that the specific, it is part of serving God, but it's the specific thing of prayer that is the mitzvah, because he wouldn't have counted general service of God because it's so broad.
Okay.
It wouldn't have been counted separately, so he's counting pray to God. What was the other one? There was 5, right? Well, we'll come back to it, because if I go back there, I'm not gonna. So far, that's what I remember, hopefully. So there was, do we have love God? Do we have love God? I think it might have been love. It was love God. That was it. It was to love God. So there was the mitzvah to know God, the mitzvah to unify God, the mitzvah to love God, the mitzvah to be in awe of God. Because he said, amongst the things to love God was not just the experience of loving him, but also to reach out to others and to tell them about God. That's part of fulfillment of the mitzvah to love God. So what we would call outreach, and it wouldn't just be outreach to other Jews, it would be outreach to Gentiles as well, because if, when you love something, when you love God, that's part of your love of God. You want other people to know about his wonderful characteristics and stuff. So that was love of God, awe of God, and then we had prayer. So now number 6. That is that he commanded us to associate with the sages, to gather with them, and to constantly be involved with them in all manner of work and interaction, in eating and drinking and business. All right, so you're not just hanging out with the sages when they're teaching. You also want to eat with them and drink with them, and you want to do business with them, so that it comes to us to imitate their actions and believe the truth of their words. So in order to get to this end, the end of this commandment, you in other words, you don't want to just learn their Torah. You want to learn about everything they do. How do they eat? How do they drink? The first thought that comes to mind when I think about this is I saw an interview, it's on YouTube, where Jean Le Carre is talking about Alec Guinness embodying George Smiley, the character George Smiley. And so what happened was Alec Guinness, Jean Le Carre had been writing these books. And at some point, there was a decision made to do the TV series, the BBC TV series. One of them was Smiley's People, and the other one was Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And Alec Guinness plays the character of George Smiley. So Jean Le Carre is going to be part of the TV production as well. I think he wrote the screenplay, but he's very much involved in the project. He's not just the guy who wrote the original books that they're based on, but he's also very involved in the project. So he is, has been schmoozing with Alec Guinness, and Alec Guinness asked Jean le Carré if he could introduce him to a spy, a real spy. And he wants to meet a real spy. So Jean le Carré set up a meeting, and they had dinner together. And he said, when you watched, there was a point where he's like watching Alec Guinness, and Alec Guinness is just imitating some of the movements of this guy. Even like the guy was like circling his glass with his finger, like just going something like that. And suddenly he noticed Alec Guinness is like copying him. He's like circling his glass with his finger. He's trying to embody this character. He's trying in order for the character to become, true to life, he has to have a model to embody it. So he was just talking about Alec Guinness's process. And eventually he said that Alec Guinness's portrayal of Smiley changed his image of Smiley, and he impacted him. So that from then on, when he wrote books that had George Smiley in it, it was Alec Guinness. It was his character that he was using, because Alec Guinness had done such an incredible job of embodying it. But anyways, Alec, in other words, he sort of recognized that in order to embody the character, in order to bring to life this kind of character, he had to eat and drink and stuff with him, because he had to see, how does he eat, how does he drink, how does he these little things that apparently, like wiping his glasses on his tie or something. There were just certain things that became kind of gestures symbolic of the character and very much informed the character, that are just little gestures. And he was looking for that. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Why are you eating and drinking with Talmidei Chachamim? Because even the way they eat and drink is a kind of window into their character. And there's if you are not just looking to learn from them, but to model them, then even when they're eating and drinking and doing business, which they seem far from Torah, you would think you don't need to spend time with them during those times, but those are specifically when you do, so that it comes to us to imitate their actions and believe the truth of their words. And that is his, may he be exalted, saying, and to him shall you cling. So this is the word dvekus. So the Rambam, when it says that you shall cling to God, when the Rambam is explaining the notion of dvekus, he is saying that dvekus means to cleave to his scholars, to cleave to Talmidei Chachamim. Now, he doesn't make this up. He is quoting this. He's going to get this from the Midrash. And this command has already been repeated, and to cling to him. And in the Sifrei, it appears, and to cling to him, cling to the sages and their students. So this is where the Rambam's getting this from, that if you want to fulfill the mitzvah of dvekus, then you should cling to scholars. So that's why you'll see people trying to drive the person, or to help the person in mundane things, like around to actually, in some sense, kind of serve them. So it's considered like a coup, to be the person who drives a great sage from one place to another, or is the person who takes care of their arrangements. Like if you are the person, let's say this great sage is coming to America, and you're the one who's booking all their arrangements, and you're there making sure they're comfortable and taking care of all these little things, so that you can sort of see them, in moments where the camera is not on them, so to speak, and see how they behave. And you get these kind of little details about the service of God. Ultimately, this is about the service of God. But if you want to really understand service of God, this is an ideal way to do it. And they accordingly brought a proof about this obligation of a person to marry the daughter of a Talmud scholar, to feed Torah scholars, to give them business, from his saying, and you shall cling. And they said, and it is possible for a person to cling to the divine, and is it possible for a person to cleave to the divine presence? In other words, God's not physical. So how do you hold on to him? And behold, it is written, for the Lord your God is a consuming fire. And not only is he not physical, but there's a fear. There's a fear of getting too close to God, as we saw from the people who their experience at Sinai, they step back, not closer, they step back. Rather, anyone who marries his daughter to a Torah scholar, who marries the daughter of a Torah scholar, or who benefits a Torah scholar, scriptures considers it as if he clung to the divine presence. This is not exactly the same as what he said before. He said, if you pay attention, he said that he commanded us to associate with the sages, to gather with them, to constantly be involved with them in all manner of work and interaction, in eating, drinking, and business, so that it comes to us to imitate their actions. You see that? He's talking about what I was describing before, but the Midrash doesn't exactly, the Midrash seems to be emphasizing more what we would call service. That by serving, it sounds like from the Midrash that by serving the scholar, you're sort of serving God. Where there's a Gemara in Brachos that says that anybody who pours wine for a scholar, it's as if he poured wine on the altar. Anybody who brings food to a scholar, it's like he brought food on the altar. So that's what this sounds more like. This sounds more like if you serve them, if you benefit them, then it's as if you're benefiting God, as if they are somehow a kind of symbol for the divine, and therefore that by giving to them and taking care of them, it's like you're sort of taking care of the divine. That's what this last part sounds. It doesn't.
Right.
His part seemed like that. Yeah.
Doesn't the Gemara sound self-serving? I mean, Maimonides doesn't sound self-serving, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, because they're the sages. I've had this conversation with Shauli and one of my nephews, who both Talmidei Chachamim, and they bristle at it when I say it, but hopefully they sort of understand it, which is that you have to be skeptical of any hierarchy that you come up with where you're at the top of it. It's possible that it's true, but you should be skeptical of it. There's times when you need to recognize that you are valuable and that you add value, but for the most, that's a little bit. For most of it, it's better not. It's not useful to think you're at the top of any hierarchy. It's just not. It's not useful. So, like anything where it seems like Talmidei Chachamim are at the top, if you are considered a Talmid Chacham and Talmidei Chachamim are at the top of the list, you shouldn't like dwell on that too much, because it's not useful to you. Maybe other people should look at it, but not you. You should find a way to be the other way. I even shared with Rabbi Brandon, it made him nervous, that I've davened. I do this every once in a while with my Shmona Esrei, where I imagine that I'm, of all the people on the planet, I'm the last in line. In other words, I'm the least meritorious. There's got to be a way. I'm pretty sure there's ways that I could come up with a metric where I'm the last in the line. Because I can imagine, I spend most of my life trying to imagine metrics where I'm at the front of the line, And that takes a lot of, creative work. Whatever that creative work is, I could easily do it the other way around. I'm the last in line. And so I daven as the least meritorious person in the world. I've even done it where I'm the least meritorious, not just of people, but of all creation, the least
I don't
meritorious.
understand what he's talking about.
But here's so this is what when I start, before I start the Shemona Esrei, I imagine I am the least meritorious person on the planet, but God still loves me anyways. He still loves me anyways. So when I'm davening, I'm experiencing the love that God has, even if I have no merit at all. I'm the least meritorious of anybody. So for instance, when you hear, there are books that are in the sort of galaxy of Alcoholics Anonymous, where there are just story after story after story of alcoholics who have what people call hit bottom. So this would be a very common scenario. You have a man who is vomiting into the toilet. His family's already left him. His doctor has told him he has cirrhosis of the liver. He's been fired from his job and he's vomiting into the toilet. And at that moment, he says, God, I'm handing myself over to you. I cannot do this without you. And suddenly he has a breakthrough. And that's the beginning of a path to sobriety. There are thousands of stories like that. Now, picture that guy. In order for his family to leave him, he has become the worst husband in the world, the worst father in the world. They're leaving. They can't be around him anymore. In order for his business to drop him, he has to be the worst at what, too bad to tolerate. He is objectively, if you could have an objective system, by the time he's hit bottom, this guy, he really would be at the bottom of merit. You could imagine that. He's at the bottom of merit. And it's exactly at that time that he feels closeness to God. So in other words, that God is, this is what we say, that God is omnipresent, that God is everywhere. That is the profound reason why we emphasize that. The profound reason we emphasize that God is everywhere is not just because we're philosophers and we have to explain to you how, what the notion of God is. That if it was just that, it would be relegated to, to Mor Nevuchim and to some discussions of scholars. Why is it that amongst everyone we emphasize that God is everywhere? Because, and especially to our children, we want our children to know that God is everywhere, is to know that he will be there when you need him. He will always be there when you need him. Gam ki ela begeitz hamavas. Even when I go in the valley of the shadow of death, lo ira ra, I will not fear evil. Ki ata imadi, because you are with me. God is everywhere. He's there. So to experience, that, because in my mind, I would never let myself think of myself at being at the back of the line. But there are times when I should consider myself at the back of the line. And that to see that being at the back of the line, God is just as close to me there as he would be if I'm at the front of the line. He's just as available, or just something there at that time. So there's advantages to not buying into the hierarchy. That sometimes it's the advantages to try to experience the opposite of the hierarchy, not for too long, but just for a little bit, so that you can experience this other thing and understand how important it is that everybody knows that he's always available. All right. So, and I can tell you that there have been times when I've been around great people, at these kind of moments, and they are some of my most important interactions with great people are when they're not on, when they're not officially speaking, they're not officially talking, they're not officially counseling, but they're just living their everyday life, and see them sort of navigating their everyday life is hugely, hugely impactful. That's what he's going for at the beginning. But again, at the end, it does seem like he's talking more about serving them. I mean, at least the source that he's picking seems to me more about serving them than it is about hanging out with them. Okay, so that's dveikus. Now, I just want to go here for a second. All right, so this is a commentary. It's called the Ein Yosef. So he's paying attention to the Ramban, Nachmanides, because the Ramban famously composed a critique of many of the Rambam's opinions here in the Book of Mitzvot, in defense of the earlier work, the Bahag, even though he doesn't always agree with the Bahag either. But one of the reasons to look at this, to look toward the Ramban, is because this doesn't sound like Vegas. when you think of dveikut or dveikus as at least the way we culturally speak about dveikus, it's a kind of spiritual moment with God. Somebody is singing Zmirot on Shabbat and gets caught up in the spirit of the moment, the Shabbos, the being with family and friends, the food, the everything, and you sort of get caught up in it and express it in song, and your heart is lifted. That is typically a moment that we think of as dveikus. It's like your soul is cleaving to God's soul. But it's the Rambam's seems to be so much more down to earth and practical than that. And so often when dveikus gets evoked, it's evoked not like this. It's evoked more like that moment from Zmiros that you're looking for. In fact, there's even a like dveikustik. Like if somebody says that was a very dveikustik moment, a dveikus-like moment, a dveikustik moment, what they mean is that you feel like your soul is touching God. So the first thing you would think of is, what does the Ramban have to say about this? And he points out, Haramban lo he'ir bechlal al mitzvazu. The Ramban did not critique. He did not comment. He didn't make any observations about this mitzvah. He also did not remove it. So he includes this mitzvah, and he doesn't have any apparent disagreement with the Rambam. Ayin barambam b'sof b'mitzvah shesolka. Amnam. So it sounds like the Nachmanides, by the fact that he doesn't disagree and he includes his mitzvah, that he agrees with the Rambam that this is the definition of dveikus. If you what is dveikut? This is the definition. Omnam, however, ra'isi bechinuch b'mitzvah tov lamed daled ubo tidbak. So in the chinuch, he doesn't have this as mitzvah number 6. He has this as mitzvah 434. And you shall cleave to him. Achrei dehevi kenusach harambam. So after he quotes the Rambam, hevi v'zelashono, he brings, and the following is a quote. V'haramban zal kosav ki ikar mitzvah zu huli shava mishmo baruch hu lekayim hamitzvahs. Shenem arvi nishbati v'akayim alishmor mitzvah lishmor mishpatei tzikecha. So he quotes the Ramban as saying the way of fulfilling cleaving to God is by making an oath that you will fulfill the mitzvot, or a particular mitzvah. As it says in Tehillim, Mishpati v'akayema, I swore and then I followed through to keep your righteous mitzvos. V'heishivu sham l'kayim ha-mitzvah shenemar nishpati v'gomer. V'heishivu sham hahu mi ubo tidbak nafka adkan. So he quotes the Ramban and he says that this is the fulfillment of the mitzvah of cleaving to God. Ubaniyosi lo matzasi b'divrei haramban sham. I looked there. In my humble opinion, there is no. It doesn't say that in the Ramban. Desfir lekayim mitzvah mitzvah lishava ela adarav mafurish b'dvarav she'ein ela rishus ayin sham b'divrei chinuch tzarich iyun. If you look over there, the Ramban seems to say the opposite. If somebody wants to do that, fine, but that's not considered something a person should go out of their way to do. Swearing God's name is not a mitzvah. There's a warning. If you do it, you should only swear in God's name. But it's not saying that you should go out of your way to swear in God's name. So apparently in the next mitzvah, he's going to go into more about this. But anyways, there is a place where the book, the Sefer HaChinuch, which is really one of the go-to places. If you were going to go through the mitzvot, the most likely place to go is Sefer HaChinuch. That's where it lists all 613 mitzvahs and makes reference to the Rambam, but also quotes others, as you see, quotes the Ramban. So therefore, the assumption is you're going to get a broader approach than just doing one book or another. So that's often the address, but he says he quotes the Ramban as saying something different, but then when you look there, the Ramban isn't there, and he said the Ramban actually says the opposite. But anyways, according to him, making an oath to God that you will do his mitzvos or a particular mitzvah is a way to cleave to him. And you could see how somebody might say that making an oath to God binds you in some way closer to God. It could help to explain Yaakov's behavior after the latter vision. After the latter vision, in a couple weeks, the Torah portion, where Yaakov is leaving on his way to the house of Lavan, and he falls asleep, and there's a vision of a ladder, and there's angels going up and down, and it says that God is at the top of the ladder, and God promises that he's going to take care of him, he's going to protect them, and he's going to, etc. And so over there, after the experience, Yaakov says, if you do those things, and then he makes an oath that he will tithe and he will make this place some kind of a house of God. So many people are bothered by why he's doing this. Why is he making this oath? It almost sounds like he's trying to up the ante. He's saying, okay, I'll sweeten it for you. Like he's not quite sure God's going to do it, but he's in order to make it worth God's while, he's going to throw in some tithing and make him a holy place, and that'll be more of a motivation for God to follow through, and that can't be, chas v'shalom. So, but it could be that this is what he's modeling is this. That it's a way of getting closer to God, to kind of force to up the ante, to sort of tie to tie what otherwise is something that comes whether you deserve it or not, tie it to your behavior or tie it to his behavior, that this is a way of making yourself closer to God, fulfillment of cleaving to God, kind of cleaving to God. And that might be the source where they get this from ultimately. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they have other sources, but that could be the biblical source for this idea. That if you
Isn't there a difficulty with taking an oath that you're going to obey a commandment?
Yeah, so we happen to be doing the Dorim in Daf Yomi. And so regularly a shvuah doesn't work on a command because you are already obliged to do the command. And the understanding of the Gemara is you're not just obliged to do the command, but you've already been obliged by an oath. This was an oath taken by the people at the time, as characterized in the Torah portion of Mishpatim, when there's like a sacrifice made, blood's being sprinkled, and people say, we will do and we will hear, that people are making an oath to fulfill the Torah. So it's called Mushba Va'omed Mehar Sinai. We're already have a standing oath from the time of Sinai. So you're not adding anything by making an oath. That's what it seems like. So that when the Gemara asks about it, it quotes this verse, Nishbati v'akayem lishmor mitzvosei tzikecha, and like maybe it doesn't add a lot in if you make it as a shvuah, as an oath, maybe it doesn't technically add an extra requirement on you, but it is still sort of motivating. But I agree that this if it technically doesn't add a requirement, then how is it motivating? But somehow it's considered acceptable as a motivational tool. In fact, the Gemara in many places does not like neder. Neder actually works on a mitzvah. To actually use the words, if you use neder, which is what Yaakov, I think, uses the words neder. So does he use neder, or do we just call it a neder? Second here. Zeroing in on the chapter, okay. By Yidar Yaakov neder lemor. Yaakov makes a neder. So the Gemara says that a neder does work on it. The neder is more focused on the object than the person, and therefore a neder does work on mitzvahs. So even though, but here they're talking about making a shvuah, nishbati v'akayem lishmor mishpatei tzikecha. This is more a shvuah. So specifically, you'd have to say that Yaakov is modeling a concept. I don't know if over here they really care if you did a shvuah or a neder so much. It's just that you've bound yourself to it. But technically, Yaakov made a neder.
Okay, I've forgotten the basic distinction between the two, just briefly.
So briefly, the Gemara in the beginning of Nedorim says that a shvua is about the person and a neder is about the object. This is a simple distinction, but it's not simple to explain it. So one of the more popular ways of explaining this distinction is that when you make a neder, so the typical formula for a neder is, I forbid this upon me like a korban. So I forbid this chocolate cake upon me like a korban, just like a korban is forbidden for me to misuse. So I can't, in most cases, I can't eat a korban. Let's say I'm talking about that. So I can't eat this. In others, I can't misuse this. So this is a kind of narrative that suggests that what you're trying to do is you're trying to make this cake as if it was a sacred object. Now, the reason I can't misuse a sacred object is because the object itself is sacred. If I misuse the sacred object, I am diminishing, I'm degrading, I'm disrespecting a sacred object. So the narrative of a neder is that I am identifying this with a sacred object. And if I would misuse this from now on, I am degrading, disrespecting, denigrating this object. The narrative of an oath is different. The narrative of an oath, which is a shvua, is I will not do this. If I say I will not do this, I am emphasizing my person, my being. If I misuse it, or if I do what I said I wasn't going to do, I am denigrated. I am disrespected. I am diminished. So it's two kind of ways of going about something. They evoke a different kind of story, and they both get to forbidding the object, but from a different angle. And sometimes one is appropriate, sometimes the other one is an appropriate way to do it. Sometimes one will work and sometimes the other one won't work because of some technicality. So if it's about me, the person, if I say, I am taking upon myself, let's say, to put on tefillin, but I already have made that commitment. So making it again technically doesn't add anything. You see from the Gemara that when it like nishbati v'kayem lishmar mitzvasei mishpatei tzikecha, that it is a language that indicates my my will to commit myself, even though I know I'm already committed. It's a kind of a way of adding motivation, even if it technically doesn't change the circumstances. But a neder would. But again, over here in this point that he's making about that somehow this is dveikus. So you could still say that the Yaakov experience is a model for how it's dveikus, that somehow you're upping your connection. You're trying to use an opportunity to cleave even closer to God. And certainly he's going into a territory. He's afraid. He's afraid of what's going to happen when he's there. I'm sure he's afraid physically what's going to happen there, but he's also afraid spiritually what's going to happen when he goes to the house of Lavan. And God even acknowledges, he says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm going to be here with you. So this thing of doing the neder is a way to cleave even harder. It's like God is like patting him on the shoulder and telling him, don't be afraid. And then Yaakov is like giving him a hug. Like, because he doesn't want God to be away from him, at all. Because because it is scary for him to go. All right. I say,
Rabbi, is one question, is there a difference between doing a positive, like you forbid, I will not do something, I will not eat cake, and making an oath that you will do something, like I will wash the dishes every night before I go to bed? I mean, is
right,
there
so you're saying as far as cleaving or as far as does it work?
yeah, I just wonder if there is a distinction between, it's between,
As cleaving, as far as cleaving, or does it work?
does it work, I guess? Yeah,
So it shouldn't make a difference if it's a mitzvah either way. It
but
shouldn't
not a
make
mitzvah, not a mitzvah. Okay.
not a
that's-
mitzvah. Right, but if it was something else, it works in all directions. It
Okay,
works positive. In fact, that's an actual Mishnah in Shavuos. It says there are two which are for. There's a Shvuah, I will do this, and a Shvuah, I won't do this. There's a Shvuah, I did do this, or a Shvuah, I didn't do this. So it's actually a
the same.
overt Mishnah that says it works the same. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right.
Okay,
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.